Mise en place. Good mise is essential in a professional kitchen. If you don't have tight mise, you ain't shit. Now what is mise en place? I'm gonna explain it, I'm gonna run you through it. Today, we're gonna make some mise en place and show you the ultimate hipster chef's knife, the Kiritsuke. I'm Nathan, one of the knife nerds at Knifewear, where we sharpen your mind about Japanese knives. Now what's mise en place? Mise en place in French means everything in its place, and it's a concept that professional cooks and chefs are taught from day one. Basically, it means you do all your prep ahead of time so that all of your components for your dishes are ready to go. Having everything pre-cut, measured, ready to go, I'm sure you've seen the TV chefs do it before. What it means is all you have to focus on is execution. It's gonna allow you to execute without stress and just enjoy the cooking process. Now, I've worked with a lot of quote-unquote hipster chefs in my day. You know, the guys with the beards or the fancy mustaches and tattoos all over their arms. And what I see a lot of them using as their primary knife in their knife roll is a 210 or 240 Kiritsuke. Now what is a Kiritsuke? A Kiritsuke, in my mind, is kind of a hybrid between a nakiri, a tall vegetable chopping knife with a flat edge, and a gyuto, which is more like a traditional French chef's knife, something with a nice long curve and a longer blade. Now historically, a Kiritsuke was a hybrid knife, one of the first, I would say, multi-tools in a very traditional Japanese kitchen. They looked a lot like this. They were a single bevel knife, which meant they were only sharp on one side, much like traditional sushi knives. And they were in fact a hybrid between a yanagiba and a nusuba, which is, the first one's a long knife for slicing sashimi. The second one is a taller, more square knife for doing fine vegetable garnishes and that sort of work. At some point in recent years, they kind of hybridized into what we see today. And this is a double bevel Kiritsuke. That means it's sharpened on both sides of the blade, just like a traditional chef's knife, just like what all of us are used to using in our kitchen. What that means is it's functional for daily mincing, slicing, dicing, but it's got a little more functionality than just a chef's knife or just a nakiri. To demonstrate, I've got a little prep list for dinner tonight. I've got my deli cups to put all my mise en place into, and I've got a beautiful plate of vegetables and herbs and garnish ingredients, and we're just gonna do a little bit of mise en place so that when I grill my steak tonight, everything is ready to go, and I don't have to stress about doing the cutting while I'm cooking. Okay, so we got our old trusty friend, Mr. Onion here. We're gonna do a little bit of fine dice, you know, something you'd use, say, if you were making a nice risotto. And we got a really just small, simple, I think this is a 180 or 195 Kiritsuke, something that you could use in a home kitchen, but would also work really well on a line. Working in restaurants, I always preferred to use longer chef's knives, like a 240 or even at least a 210. But if you're working in a small cramped kitchen, which a lot of professional kitchens are, or if you're working at home, you might prefer a smaller knife. One of the things that professionals love about Kiritsukes is that they're kind of built for speed. They got this really sharp precision tip. So if you need to do a lot of scoring cuts really quick, they just get right in there and you're never fighting with the knife or the food. They also have a bit of a curve, just like a gyuto. So if you like to make those nice rocking cuts, they're really, really fantastic for that. Let's go a little faster. Let's pretend your chef's yelling at you and you gotta get a whole bunch of brunoise onion done really quick. Look at that. I'm a little rusty, but even an old worn out cook can still use a Kiritsuke and get the job done real quick.
Show off.
Cool. Got my brunoise onions for risotto, done. Now, let's do another onion just for fun. We're gonna do a really fine slice on this guy. And we're gonna use, this is technically called a hakata, but it's basically the same as a Kiritsuke, but it's got an even flatter edge. So you'll notice before I was using a rocking cut, something that's really good for your knives, allows you to take full advantage of the shape of the knife. That said, rocking cuts aren't always functional in a professional kitchen. Often, like I said earlier, it's all about speed. And so a lot of chefs will bring their knife down really quick and fast on the cutting board like this. Now, sharp knives work by sliding. So if you just push down, often even a very sharp knife won't be able to do the job properly. So we're gonna do a bit of a hybrid. We're gonna slide back. We're just gonna use our wrist to do the action, but we're also gonna bring that knife down in one clean motion. And because it's got that nice flat edge, we're gonna get a clean cut. Everything's gonna be nicely separated. Watch this. Next, we're gonna shave a little bit of fennel. You know, I love fennel, especially raw. I will cook it into often my spaghetti sauce, but a little bit of shaved fennel can really elevate, you know, a slaw, or if you're making a seafood dish, it makes for a beautiful garnish. And so we're gonna use the KIRITSUKE to just finely shave that fennel. Sure, you can use a mandolin for this, but I find mandolins a lot more dangerous than a good sharp knife. And again, because we got that nice flat edge, look at that, clean cuts. Nothing's still stuck to itself. You don't have those, what we call accordion cuts, where everything's kind of still attached by a membrane. It's all beautifully separated. And then we can just throw that onto whatever we're plating up, and we'll have a beautiful garnish. Okay, shaved fennel, done. We got a few left here. I am gonna go back to the Zhuan, and I'm gonna compare a few different knives. I'm gonna do some finely shaved mushrooms, and maybe pick a favorite. Now, as I mentioned earlier, a mistake I see a lot of folks making is just bringing their knife down into the cutting board and slamming it like that. And that can work, but you're often not getting a full contact with the board, especially if you have a curved edge, and you're dulling your knife really quickly. So using the right cutting board, using a little bit of a curve motion, but also using the right technique is gonna help preserve the edge of your knife a lot longer. See, I'm hitting the board, but I'm not smacking it, right? I'm just tapping it when I get to the end of the mushroom. Yeah, I quite like this Zhuan. This is a really nice thin knife, really precise, really smooth. It's got a very polished texture. The Damascus is really smooth there, and so it just glides through mushrooms like, kind of like they're not even there. Let's try the Hakata from Miyazaki. This knife is super cool. It is heavier, much heavier than the Zhuan, and much thicker. And I thought it would struggle more, but it's quite smooth. It is shredding the mushrooms a tiny bit more, so it might not be ideal for these really fine cuts. But if you need a nice rugged knife with a lot of weight to it to do a lot of the work for you, it's probably a good choice. And lastly, the Nigara Aogami Super. This is so far the best contender to join my home collection. It's got just enough weight to travel through the mushroom without me having to work very hard. But it's not too thin, it's not too light. So I'm not worried about running the edge into the cutting board over and over again like this. And it's, I mean, look at that, it's just a sexy knife. Finely sliced mushrooms, complete. This is a cut you see a lot, not so much as a diner cook. It's called a chiffonade. It's a very fine sort of ribbon cut of a fresh herb. And it's a beautiful way to add a herb garnish in a way that's visually attractive, but maintains the integrity of the herb and doesn't destroy it and release all the oils from the herb. I much prefer to just lay my sage flat and just use my knuckles as a guideline, because we're making very fine cuts here. And again, this is where that slightly flatter edge of the KIRITSUKE is coming in use, because I'm not rocking as much as I would have to with a Gyuto or a Santoku. I'm just pushing the knife forward and down a little bit. So I get this beautiful chiffonade, but again, none of those ribbons are still attached to each other, right? All right, chiffonade of sage is complete. All right, garlic. We all love it. It's, in my opinion, essential for most good food, but it's a pain. I'm just gonna take my heavier, thicker knife, and I'm just gonna give it a crush. Just lay your knife parallel to the cutting board. I find it works best if you got the handle near the edge of the board here. and then just lean on it. Just let the weight of your body do the work. You can even do a couple cloves at a time. Once your garlic's crushed and loosened up a little bit, it's really easy to get just a nice slice on. And you can do that really fine shaved garlic. You know, if you're making a pasta dish, you know, maybe just something with some nice anchovies and olive oil, I wouldn't go any further than that. I would just leave the garlic in those nice, beautiful little slices. All right, minced garlic is finished. Last but not least, scallions, or green onions as I call them. These guys are awesome. You know, typically, in my case, they're used raw, but you can get these really nice long, fine strands. And when they're used as a garnish, I just find those thinner, longer cuts a little more attractive than just little green onion discs. This is a cut that's trickier to do quickly, and I certainly haven't mastered, but we're gonna give it a go. And this is, again, where we're really getting the most out of the long, flat edge of the Kiritsuke. Because I'm just sliding the knife forward. I've got a little bit of a rock from my wrist, but it's not a substantial rock. And so I'm not worried about taking too much time. Okay, green onions are done, which means my mise en place is complete. So again, the reason I was able to get this done quickly is not just because of the technique and practice, but it's because of the shape of the knife. You've got a bit of a curve, so you can get nice rocking cuts or sliding cuts if you need to, but you've got a tall blade with lots of knuckle clearance. You can get into bigger things like fennel or onions without running out of knife. And you've got that beautiful flat edge, so when you hit the cutting board each time, it's a clean cut. No accordion vegetables, nothing that you have to go back and pick apart or your chef is gonna yell at you for. So, Kiritsuke, in my mind, best knife for a chef, especially one of those hipster chefs. You know who I'm talking about.